Hi, welcome to Tinfoil Handkerchief Alignment, and today I'm going to talk about the third chakra, the solar plexus, which is located just below the ribs. The solar plexus is considered to be the personal power center of our energetic body. Our confidence, authenticity, and willpower contribute to our productivity, accomplishments, and overall satisfaction and feeling fulfilled within our own lives. To be clear, I don't perceive accomplishments and feeling fulfilled as they relate to the solar plexus chakra to necessarily mean accumulating accolades in work or hobbies or other aspects of life. I interpret that more to mean being selective on what you pursue and maintaining integrity when you are in pursuit of milestones or accomplishments. The solar plexus chakra is represented by the color yellow, which is reminiscent of the warmth of the sun, which is one of the governing astrological bodies of the solar plexus. Yellow is also a social color known to promote feelings of optimism and helps boost creativity. As I've said before, I'm not super familiar with color therapy, but yellow is also said to provide supplementary support for arthritis and jaundice. The color yellow can represent many things, including enlightenment, knowledge, personal growth, and happiness. The sense of sight is associated with the solar plexus, which, to be honest, I was originally confused by because I thought sight would be more associated with the third eye chakra. But the way I interpret sight as a sense correlating to this chakra would be the ability to trust your gut, so to speak. Being able to see beyond what is visibly perceptible in ways not limited to optical sight. As I just kind of mentioned, the main astrological body of the solar plexus is the sun, which symbolizes personal energetic power and leadership qualities. Our relationship to the sun can influence our vitality, willpower, personal passions, confidence, and decision making. Mars and Jupiter are also associated with the solar plexus chakra. Mars is a planet of action, willpower, motivation, and how we assert ourselves, while Jupiter symbolizes personal growth, wisdom, and abundance. The element of fire and the corresponding astrological signs of Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius are also associated with the solar plexus. Fire as an element represents passion, both personal passion and how passionate we are about certain things. In the major arcana of tarot, cards associated with fire represent various qualities of leaders in leadership or inspiration of some sort. Astrological fire signs embody a lot of these same traits. Aries and Leo are often confident and natural leaders, while Sagittarius is more of a knowledge seeker, but can be just as bold as the other two. They can all be hard-headed, competitive, and are usually passionate people who like to take risks or try something new. These are also traits associated with the solar plexus chakra and the corresponding planets of Mars and Jupiter. So it's pretty cool how it all just kind of connects back to each other. For crystals, I use citrine most often. I have this citrine chunk here, but I also have some little smaller citrine chunks that you can get as well. Or in a bracelet, this is a citrine bracelet. It's just nice to have around if you need like an extra boost, because then you can just wear it all day. And also this is actually a golden topaz, but this is a worry stone. So with a worry stone, you can just kind of hold on to it, and there's a groove right in it for your thumb, so you can just kind of hold it and rub it, and it's supposed to help regulate a little bit. So just another cool little tool that you can use as far as crystals go. Sometimes I also use sunstone, but you can also use amber. I just don't actually think I have any. And for scents, I usually use peppermint, but sometimes I like to get the 7 chakra packs of incense as well. And they have a non-peppermint scented one for solar plexus for those who are allergic to minty stuff. So mint scents kind of have an opposite effect on them. So there are alternative options that are available. I'm just not 100% sure on what the actual scent that they use in those is called. I think it's actually a blend of a couple other scents. So just something to keep in mind. For sound tuning, you can use the mantra of Ram and D notes. Just a reminder when it comes to color and sounds, but also extends to crystals and scents. Strength and vibrancy can determine impact, and too much or too little can over or under stimulate, which is why it's important to balance all your chakras overall so you're more attuned to yourself and better understand how much of any tool you need to help you to recalibrate. But this is much easier to do when you're able to get a more balanced energetic baseline to start. Fundamentally, consciousness is awareness. Consciousness of being is just a fancy way of saying self-awareness. When you are truly honest with yourself, you internally recalibrate your own energy and are able to better determine what being authentic means to you. When you're authentic to you, you're better able to discern what are truly your mistakes, shortcoming, or negative energy that you're holding on to, and what is being projected on you from other people. It's the most helpful thing with determining what is worth giving how much of your energy to. When you hear the term taking your power back, this is the place to start. I know for me personally on my healing journey, I realized a large part of me always feeling anxious and unsettled internally was the disconnect between how I saw myself and how other people perceived me. As I worked through the blockages in my own solar plexus, I realized that I didn't actually perceive myself the way others did, and I stopped letting their projections of who they thought I was, where it's not a fair assessment, impact how I see myself. If it's a fair assessment, then it's an area that I reflect on and try to correct within myself. For example, I've spent most of my life single. A lot of people look at that from the outside as I'm almost 40, I've never been married, and then turn around and make me feel like there's something wrong with me because of it. Although I'll admit I did have a lot of pretty deep emotional wounds that I didn't start working on healing within myself until the last couple years, I realized many people were projecting based on how they would feel in my situation and less on how I felt about my situation. And most people that were making those judgments of me also knew that I prioritized work. I was working 2 jobs. So I had a different schedule that made it hard to get to know new people, especially if they were looking for someone that was more available than I was able to be. But a lot of people outside of my situation didn't necessarily see that aspect. They just saw age and single and damaged goods, which I don't think was fair, but, like I said, other people's projections towards me and not how I felt about myself. Though for a long time, I let those projections impact how I did see myself. A lot of people don't understand that being alone doesn't have to mean being lonely. And while they look at me and think of how lonely they would feel if they were me, that's not actually how I feel. The more I worked on my solar plexus and found confidence in myself and was becoming more willing to try new things and find new hobbies, for me, I do a lot of crafts, the more I appreciated the alone time to do so and not having to worry about whether or not I was impacting a partner's schedule because I was off, in a 5-hour art marathon. I've truly come to believe that if being single makes you feel lonely, you don't like yourself enough to enjoy your own company. Now, there is a difference between being lonely in the sense of physical presence of someone else and being lonely in the sense of needing closeness and physical touch. I'm not the type of person that I just want to have someone around just for the sake of having someone around. My perception of that may be a little skewed based on my life experience. As I've said before, I'll never say I'm a fully healed person, so I can admit that I also have a thing where I don't like to be touched. However, as I've worked to recalibrate my internal energy, a lot of my personal hangups around that are just being touched in more intimate ways by people I don't have an emotional connection with is just not something I'm into. It kind of goes back to what I was talking about in the sacral chakra episode, so if you haven't watched it, I would recommend checking it out. The reason why I say loneliness largely comes if you don't enjoy your own company is because I see a lot of people who just seem to fill space with distractions and other people in an effort not to sit alone with themselves and their own thoughts. But why? Fundamentally, I think it's fighting projections from other people while trying to figure out who we are as individuals and balancing that with those projections. I also find that a lot of people ask for advice from others to almost not have to make decisions for themselves or have some sort of way not to have to take accountability for that decision in some way, which would also be an indicator of an imbalanced solar plexus. It's essentially a lack of confidence in your own ability to make decisions and understand what would be the best outcome for a particular situation, taking your ego out of it. Advice from others is great, but it's important to remember that they're offering advice from their perspective of your situation based on their life experiences. So they don't have the same emotional attachment or have to live with the physical outcomes as you would. That's why it's important to determine the things that actually matter to you and not just what you are told matters most in a situation. To be fair, with an imbalanced solar plexus, you're more likely to question your own judgment and decision-making abilities, more likely to feel irresponsible or helpless, and can cause a buildup of negative emotions that can come out as varying levels of anger and digestive issues. In no way does that mean every decision you make will be easy with a balanced solar plexus, because it doesn't mean that. It means that you will feel more confident and have more discernment, that you will be able to make the best and most fair decisions, even in more challenging situations. I also believe that another component of taking your power back connects back to what I was saying in the previous episode about the sacral chakra and intimate connections. Allowing others to project their perceptions on you and starting to believe them, if you know them not to be true of yourself, is giving your power away. Just as I was saying, sex without intimacy felt spiritually depleting for me. It's a similar concept. However, that's also another example of how rebalancing one of your chakras can boost the energetic baseline of flow in another. When I was having sex without intimacy or even a relationship, I felt used and unworthy. I did feel like more of a broken person. But when I stopped using how desirable men found me as a partner as a benchmark for how valuable I felt as an individual person outside of being a partner, and when I stopped viewing how much sex I was having as how desirable men thought I was, I started reclaiming pieces of my personal power. I feel that way because in my experiences, most of them didn't try to get to know me well enough to really have a reason to make some of those judgments about me. And when I looked deeper at those connections, I also realized that I was bringing or giving more to them, even with simple things like emotional availability and support, than they were to me. I was putting in effort that wasn't being reciprocated. To be fair, I did and do a lot of things because I care. To truly do something with good intentions is to not expect anything in return. I often don't expect anything in return, but that doesn't mean emotional reciprocity shouldn't be a standard baseline in a healthy, intimate connection. You will feel depleted if it's not. And I would argue it's then not a healthy connection. I think that goes back to something else I was saying in that sacral chakra episode about how I think a lot of people struggle with how to determine what's being selfish from determining healthy boundaries and self-care. If you're self-aware enough to feel selfish, there is a level of guilt often associated with that. When you're able to discern the difference and set healthy boundaries that allow you to heal, those feelings of guilt are transmuted into positive energy, bringing more calm and peace within yourself. You've heard people say things like, that takes up space in my mind. Worrying about what others think of you all the time takes up space. The more you care about what you think of yourself and less about what other people think, you reclaim more of that space in your mind for yourself. Same goes for emotional baggage. If you're honest with yourself as you do your shadow work and working through old traumatic wounds, you're hoarding less emotional baggage, freeing up emotional space and giving more room for the energy around you to better flow and raise the overall vibration around you. I should also say, though, I think taking your power back makes it sound a little more selfish and maniacal than it really is. Maybe reclaiming your personal power is a better way to phrase it. Once you're able to discern what is a fair assessment over what's a projection from someone else's perspective, though, you'll realize that often the way other people treat you is more a reflection of themselves than it is you. But it's also hard to be able to accurately see that if you're not confident in who you are as a person. Now, the line between confident and arrogant is also a very fine line that I think a lot of people struggle to balance, myself included. The way I see it, arrogance is when you think you know better, can't be wrong, and won't take accountability. Confidence is being secure in who you are, but knowing there is always more to know or learn, and that mistakes can be learning experiences if you acknowledge them. And knowing it'll all work out the way it's supposed to, rather than trying to force an outcome to try to be the winner of a situation. Not every situation or interaction with other people should be seen as a win-lose or a me versus you kind of thing. Finding the balance between confidence and arrogance is essentially reclaiming your free will, which connects back to the solar plexus chakra because it oversees both personal confidence and willpower. When you're more confident, you're less reactive. I find those who are more inclined to be arrogant to be more reactive because they're often trying to prove a point to get the upper hand in a situation, rather than trying to find a fair and balanced outcome. For example, a lot of the reason I felt my self-esteem was trash for a long time was feeling like I was fat. That because I was bigger, that was a big part of why I felt undesirable. In reality, it was a lot of factors, and my weight wasn't as much of a factor as I perceived it to be. Though it may be off-putting for some, it wasn't always something that I could control as much as others thought that I could. And realistically, if a potential partner was going to change how much they loved me based on a 20-pound weight fluctuation, then they probably don't really love me for me as much as what I look like, which is a whole different issue. So why would I care what guys like that think of me anyways, if that's not the kind of relationship that I'm looking for? I do think a lot of us take on feelings of rejection more than we need to. Although I do think social media does have a lot to do with that, I think a lot of us are just really hard on ourselves in general. Just because certain guys don't like me doesn't mean I have to feel rejected by it, especially if they're not ones that I'm interested in either. And they don't have to feel rejected by that if they're not interested in me. That's confidence. But if I were to be mad or feel slighted by guys I'm not interested in, not being interested in me, that would be more of a display of a level of arrogance on my part. True authenticity is being the same person when no one's looking as you are when everyone is, without shame. But I'm also the type of person that I won't say it behind your back if I wouldn't say it to your face. I wouldn't do anything I wouldn't be willing to take accountability for, and I'm not embarrassed or unwilling to explain myself if someone doesn't agree. I'm confident enough in my opinion, in myself, and knowledge of my own life experiences and personal journey that the opinions of others don't matter as much to me, especially if they don't know me well enough to know how far I've come or to even make some of the assessments that they're making of me to begin with. As long as I try to be the best version of myself, treat others the way I want to be treated and not how they treat me, move with good intentions, empathy, compassion, honesty, and love, no one can tell me I don't. Even if they do, it's God's opinion that matters most to me. But Maat's gotta let me in, so I try to keep my heart light as a feather. I feel like it's lighter the clearer my conscience is. My conscience is clearer when I'm not lying to myself, let alone to others. Overall, it helped me become more calm and less anxious, less needy and less willing to do things that didn't feel authentic to me to appease people that were never going to be satisfied with anything I did anyways, because they could only ever seem to view me from a lens of what was missing within them. For example, when I was trying a bunch of new crafts, everyone was telling me to start small because they didn't feel capable of starting from where I was planning to start. But I had confidence within myself and my capabilities. So while I appreciated their concern, I was willing to give things a try that I wouldn't have if I had listened to everybody else. I ended up being glad that I did, and it built a lot of confidence within myself that I was able to do things better than I thought I could just because I was willing to try and take a risk of looking a little stupid or having it not turn out perfect the first time. And the great thing about using crafts as a confidence builder was they were something I could do by myself. So if they weren't as good as I hoped, I didn't have to feel more critiqued than I needed to subject myself to. I just didn't have to show anybody. I've always been naturally pretty hard on myself, so I've also learned to be honest with myself as to how good I actually think things turn out and where I can improve. Though most of my crafts don't turn out perfect, Many things turn out way better than I could have anticipated, but never would have known if I didn't even try. And that was really helpful because the more I healed, the more that kind of became an issue. But because I did the work within myself, I know that a lot of what is projected towards me is people being mad about things they feel they lack within themselves. It's really their insecurities, which becomes more clear the more people focus on you and less on themselves. Reclaiming your power is focusing on yourself and where you can improve within yourself. Same goes for expectations. Sometimes we're overly critical or hard on ourselves because of the expectations of others. However, a lot of those expectations are projections of how those people would handle situations in their circumstances, when yours would be different, even if just slightly. So while it's good to have healthy expectations, it's also important to be reasonable about those expectations and honest about your capabilities. I've found that setting little goals instead of a large, seemingly unattainable one helps with a lot of feelings of inadequacy. At least it did for me. I'd get overwhelmed if I didn't take it step by step, but slowly it helped me build confidence. Even if sometimes I felt like I was behind in whatever aspect I was working on, at least this way I was making progress while others were still seemingly trying to figure out how to take a shortcut. It's a steady pace and more rewarding the more aligned with yourself you become. Win or lose, success or fail, you can still take pride in something, even if it doesn't turn out as expected. Chances are you'll at least learn what you need to do to improve for next time. You don't need to hang on to the coulda, woulda, shouldas. You can look at it as you didn't know as much or didn't have the same experience as you've accumulated since then. If a similar cycle comes back around, and when it comes to energy, it usually does until you learn the lesson, how do you improve the situation and how you react when it does? As I've mentioned, I believe that personal power generated within the solar plexus, and as it pertains to the sense of sight, is really about how we trust ourselves and our inner knowing, or trusting the gut. It's a pretty good energetic indicator, which is why I believe so many people have developed gastrointestinal issues, because the way I see it, it's an internal conflict and a lot of emotions that are being held internally and building up in sort of a negative way, which is like gas, right? My personal theory on that is we develop those kinds of issues based on negative energy and self-perceptions we're holding on to. When we believe the projections of other people while feeling that they are untrue and not having the confidence or self-worth to feel like we deserve to be perceived better, or working to make it a more positive perception when we feel that we're being perceived negatively, and not through the lens of other people's unhealed spaces. Areas of the body associated with the solar plexus chakra are the middle spine, upper abdomen, and digestive tract. Essentially the core of the body and our main food processors. Physical indicators of a solar plexus imbalance could be things that are temporary or short-lived, like a stomach flu, or something more severe like ulcers, or more prolonged or chronic like GERD or gastritis. With gas buildup that can happen with GERD, it can also do things like induce chronic heartburn, and it can impact the voice, which is a throat chakra component. So again, it just goes to show how an imbalance in one chakra can impact how another chakra functions as well. And further to that, if GERD impacts the voice, it impacts how we perceive ourselves in how we try to communicate to other people. It's just really interesting how, again, different ailments within different chakras can indicate symptoms of imbalance with other chakras. With GERD, I feel like it's probably more a middle chakra energetic attachment, because it does seem to affect the solar plexus, the heart, and the throat. But that's just my own personal theory on that. But if anybody with GERD would like to book a healing session with me, stomach, liver, gallbladder, kidneys, spleen, and small intestines also fall within the solar plexus chakra. All of these have a filtration and or waste removal component to them, excreting what the body can't use. Energy works the same way, and the solar plexus is representative of that. When you don't hold on to the negative projections from others, you're letting go of what doesn't help you become the best version of you. Our adrenals regulate many functions within, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. From how we respond to emotional stress, our fight or flight response, or libido, to metabolism, blood pressure, and immune system response. They also assist with fat distribution, managing blood sugar levels, and how our bodies convert food into energy. The other body parts within the solar plexus get rid of or transmute that excess energy. And then when it comes to the umbilicus, that's where we were connected to our mothers in the womb and where mothers connect to their babies in the womb of the other organs governed by the solar plexus, and is how life force energy feeds into new life, integrating aspects of all of the chakras, which I think is pretty cool. And then to the rib cage, which encompasses many of the same traits or components. Overall, when we start looking at ourselves through a more healed space, projections from unhealed spaces in others don't stick as well. And it's easy to see that for the most part, they're only doing it to make themselves feel better in places where they still hurt. At the end of the day, though, no one ever has to spend more time with you than you do with yourself. So it's important to learn what it means to set healthy boundaries, prioritize self-care in a non-selfish way, talk to yourself nice, and show yourself some grace in learning. You can still be capable, confident, and authentic without everything looking perfect all the time. It's important to like yourself, especially because no one will ever have your own back like you do. Hurt people often hurt people, but healed people can also heal people. So I think it's worth a try for a lot of us to heal ourselves, and I think that it'll improve the healing of others as we get to know them a little bit more from more healed spaces within ourselves. So I hope you've enjoyed this overview of the solar plexus chakra. If you're interested in booking any personal services, check out my Etsy shop, and for bonus content, join my Patreon. Until next time, keep the peace.